Seconds. 29.
28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12. 11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
6 what?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3. 2. 1.
Hi folks and welcome back to the Scotch Tracker. Today I'm talking with, I should say, Star Trek Science Advisor Dr. Erin Macdonald. Thanks very much for coming on the program today, Erin.
Hello, thanks for having me. I love that intro. That's so great.
Thanks. So, looking back, I wondered what your earliest memories of Star Trek are.
Oh, good question. Probably my earliest memories was going over to my friend Molly's house. Her parents were really into Star Trek, and they had signed photos everywhere. They had like a life-size Spock. They had like all the big collection stuff. And that was the first time I'd ever, been exposed to Star Trek. But I didn't really personally get into it until I was in college, which was when university, where most of my colleagues were also very much into Star Trek. So we would watch it at parties. And that's where I saw episodes like, Measure of a Man, Darmok. They would pull out all the greats knowing that I'd never seen them before. And that's when I kind of fell in love with it.
Cool. And I wondered what your earliest memories, particularly of DS9, are, because I've really been enjoying on your own channel, watching some of the great discussions you've had about DS9 episodes and stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was so fun. For people who might not have seen that, on my YouTube channel, you can find, searching for my name, I did something called Star Trek Sunday Brunch with my friend Samantha, who had never seen, and the latest one we did was Deep Space Nine. So we would watch we would watch 6 at a time, and then every Sunday we would talk about the episodes, and we finished the whole series. I actually started watching Deep Space Nine when I was a PhD student in Glasgow. And that show probably, the pilot is a lot. I think we can all agree it's a lot. But I think I was probably really grabbed in the first episode with when Garrick shows up, Garrick and Bashir, and their dynamic and just that atmosphere of Quarks and all of that. I love it. And honestly, Deep Space Nine is my favorite series. And it was so fun to rewatch it this past year with someone who's never seen it before, and to go on that journey with her of her feelings about Gul Dukat, which I think all of us were surprised by, because she really liked him. And none of us could believe it. And then, just to kind of see that whole journey and go on that with her, it was so fun. It was such a delight. And I just think the great thing about Deep Space Nine, which I know it got a lot of criticism for when it first came out, but the fact that it is a station and it's not all Federation and Starfleet. It's just this random motley crew of people hanging out at a bar. I love that.
Cool. I've noticed you talked with the DS9 episode Far Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, Mark Secrete.
I watched. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, he wrote the teleplay for the story that they based that episode on, Far Beyond the Stars, and it was really interesting. And also just to kind of talk to him about writing a story like that has so much weight, that is still written from a perspective of privilege. With him being a white man writing this story, and it was really nuanced. It was really nice to talk to him about that and just recognize kind of where he took it, and the fact then that Avery Brooks directed that episode added a lot of kind of the nuances that they were looking for. And what a great episode that is.
Yeah, and as I say, I thought your interview with him was great as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I was wondering before our discussion today, like if you have aspirations of like either writing for or appearing on the show yourself, and I noticed like on your Twitter account it's got like pre-WGA writer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long road getting from there to here. I you know, it's interesting because I've gone on this kind of career journey with being an astrophysicist and being a researcher, and then going into education and public education, teaching at museums and such, and then going into aerospace engineering because public education didn't pay the bills, and but working in engineering, for a good chunk of time. I was ended up being a manager of analysis systems, and then I was still doing this consulting on the side of helping screenwriters and tell stories. I've always loved film and television. I've always wanted to work in entertainment. And so for me, like, that was a great hobby. And then once I moved out to Los Angeles, I was working out of LA Air Force Base, and I got to just meet and work with a lot of Hollywood screenwriters. And that's when I was like, oh my God, like, this is it. And so I started putting kind of more effort into that aspect, and then, had jobs here and there. And then I got this job initially with just season 3 of Discovery, and then they brought me on to work on all the shows. But I had a little bit of a crisis of like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do after this? Like, this isn't going to go on forever. And I was thankful and very grateful. I got to be on a panel with Narain Shakar and Henri Bermanis, who were the science advisors back in the 90s. And both of them, their first job in Hollywood was science advising on Star Trek. And so there's only like 3 of us out there that have done that as like a permanent job. And they've just really mentored me and given me great advice on where to pivot to. And one of the things that I started to notice and that they also suggested was pivoting into screenwriting. And it becomes very natural because even though I'm there as the scientist, I'm also there with an eye on the stories. I'm involved in the whole process. So I see the entire writing and creative process. And so last summer, I decided to try writing, my own pilot and just see if I could do it. And having been exposed to that structure of Hollywood of like, you come up with a story, you write the outline, then you write the draft. It actually suited me really well. And I discovered that I have a lot of stories I like to tell, and I have a very strong voice, and all those years of experience in random jobs have really set me up well to be a pretty decent storyteller. And so, yeah, that's kind of one of the things I'm working on now. Obviously still putting all my time into Star Trek, but really trying to find a way to position myself to move and to transition into being part of a writing staff, whether that's on Star Trek or not. I really love writing strong genre, character-driven science fiction like Star Trek. So if that works. Now, if I get to be on Star Trek, that's like a whole other thing. that's the dream of everyone. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. It's an exciting time.
Yeah. So I wondered, like, if you wanted to speak about your work on like Star Trek nowadays. You mentioned like we're talking about Prodigy and stuff.
Yeah. So like I said, I got hired initially to work on season 3 of Star Trek Discovery alongside my good friend Professor Mohammed Noor, who I think was on this channel earlier this year. But so he does the biology, I do the physics side of stuff, the astrophysics, and then because I'm in LA and because they have so many shows in development, we talked about bringing me on just to be available to all of the shows, like, I'm not full employed, but like I'm, on consultant with CBS. And so the shows can use me as much or as little as they want. And so the way the timing worked out, I did season 3 of Discovery. I've done season 4 of Discovery. I didn't come in until season 2 of Lower Decks, which is airing right now. So I do work on Lower Decks, which is a delight. And then I was brought in for season 2 of Picard, and then of course season 1 of Strange New Worlds, and then you mentioned Prodigy, which is going to be our next new Star Trek show. In the United States, it's airing on October 28th. and it's the first Star Trek show specifically written for kids, and I think it could be enjoyed by anyone. I've enjoyed every minute reading all the scripts. My partner always knows when I'm reading Prodigy because I'm very emotive. I'm always like, oh, yay, whenever I'm reading it. But they've just got such rich characters, and I feel like as people are starting to see, the trailers come out and everything, they're really feeling that same energy of just it's that young excitement of discovery and science and all the things that drew us to Star Trek in the first place, whether we were kids or as adults. And I just think one of the best lines they put in that new trailer for Prodigy is Janeway's line at the end where she just says, you've got potential. And we all feel that. We all want that. And that's what Star Trek gives us. So I'm really excited for people to see Prodigy. I think it's a great show.
Cool. Definitely looking forward to that.
Okay.
I wondered, if you could talk about, any of the episodes or contributions you had on the second season of Lower Decks so far. Since you can't talk about what's coming out.
Yeah. So I can't get too much into specifics that much. A lot of it with Lower Decks, as people probably have noticed, it is it's not its primary focus. I have to preface, I love Lower Decks, so I'm not saying anything disparaging right now. But their primary focus is not science, and that's okay. That is fine. There are plenty of other Star Trek shows for that focus. But what's great is I get to read episodes of Lower Decks like a fan. A lot of that, all those Easter eggs that we love, and we're like, I love getting to do that. And then just little punch-ups here and there. So there will be little, when they talk about, Tom Paris's time as a lizard, there's a little scientific thing that they throw out there. Just those little stuff like that. And then Brad, who's the executive producer, he mentioned on Twitter that I'm also the Stardate keeper of the Stardates, which is very stressful. Lower Decks is we've been very good, and we're still. I won't go into too many details right now because I think we want to do this properly and explain it all properly to people. But going back and trying to keep all of the Stardates consistent with all of the inconsistencies that Star Trek has had, and people have their own calculators of seeing how Next Generation did it, seeing how all these other shows worked in Stardates. Trying to keep some sort of consistent clock for that. We do have a method. We haven't published it yet. It is consistent. It might not line up perfectly with everyone's own calculators, but I will talk about it when the time is right. But I will say it's been so fun doing the Stardates for Lower Decks because they really want to get them right. And it just ended up inadvertently causing me a lot of stress. Sometimes because I want to do it right, but yeah, it's really fun.
I think that's really interesting because I remember reading about the original conception of Stardates and how it was basically designed to the thinking behind it was that it reflected the theory of relativity and the time doesn't move the same for everyone in the galaxy or whatever. So yeah, it's sort of when I read that, it sort of made sense that it would be inconsistencies.
Right. And that's been a good sort of, I think that I think, yeah, like you said, was one of the original reasons for why the Stardates were really random, that it was based on where you were in the galaxy. It was not just some fixed time that they're all going forward. It was a code that also said where you were in the galaxy, which would, that's also nice. Let's just pick a random number and make it consistent within the episode. But then, the later shows tried to implement some consistency to it. So we can backtrack all the rules. It all works.
Because it seemed to me a bit people look for sort of sense in the numerical of the Starship registry numbers, and they don't make any sense. There's nothing that says they have to make sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what helps calm me down. when I start
Yeah.
to get too worked up about it. Yeah.
So, yeah, before like the show today, like I was talking with my dad that said like there's some news about dark energy or something. I wondered if you wanted to speak about dark energy.
Yeah, I mean,
Or-
I can't speak too much to like some of those news articles that came out because some of that was like that was pre-published research, so it's research that hasn't been like peer reviewed yet.
Yeah.
But the reason it's interesting and the reason that even, the journalists might kind of jump the gun a little bit when it comes to talking about it before it's been peer reviewed. So people have probably heard the terms dark matter and dark energy. They are very different things. They have equally unimaginative names, I guess I'll say. So in our universe, everything we see and touch, everything, including like the atmosphere, including everything, is made up of something called baryons. So we called it baryonic matter. That's what makes up electrons, protons, neutrons, and then that makes up the periodic table. And so everything we see is baryons. But that baryonic matter only makes up 4% of our universe. So a lot of other stuff out there that we don't know what it is. Now, back about 100 years ago, an astronomer named Vera Rubin, who we were able to get into season 3 of Discovery, they go to the Rubin Nebula that we named after Vera Rubin. She discovered that stars in our galaxy they orbit the center of the galaxy much faster than they should based on everything that we can see. And that means that there's something else there gravitationally. There's more stuff that is causing, that big dip, and they're orbiting much further than they should. And so she realized there's stuff there, but we don't see it. It interacts gravitationally, but it's not baryonic matter. So that's what we call dark matter. Now, the other thing that astronomers discovered in the 20th century is that our universe is expanding. So like a loaf of bread, I always don't think about the crusts, just think about the inside of the bread itself. Especially if you think about raisin bread. Each little raisin is like a galaxy. It's all expanding. And then they actually discovered in the 90s, not only is it expanding, but it's expanding faster. It's accelerating as it expands. And so that's where dark energy comes from, that you... if you're going to expand bread, like you need yeast or some sort of raising agent. If you're going to blow up a balloon, you need air to go into that balloon. So the dark energy is the thing that makes our universe expand. It was actually technically first discovered by Einstein, who was putting a lot of equations together to describe our universe. And there was like a fudge factor in it that they used to talk about the rate the galaxies are moving away from each other and all of this stuff. And he kind of was like, don't like doing it, but he made this constant. And then as we've started to learn more, I mean, that's what dark energy is. And that's what makes our whole universe consistent. And so dark energy is the thing we literally know the least about when we come to astrophysics. We just know that our universe is expanding and there's something that's pushing that expansion. And that's dark energy.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
because it does. I asked my dad, what caused it? Was it super strings? And he was like, maybe we just don't know, know so little about it.
Exactly. So people do look. A lot of it is particle physics. They're trying to see if there are any sort of particles that could give an indication. Not so much if they can find a particle that is pushing stuff apart, but if their interactions can give hints toward the behavior of dark energy.
Cool. I've heard you speak before about the transporter. I was really interested in the transporter, and I heard you say something like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle makes that impossible to invent, or something like that.
Yes, yeah. So the issue with the transporter is, regardless of if it's breaking you down to figure out where everything is and then move those particles, or just to map it and send it as information and then rebuild out of something else. We've seen both happen in Star Trek. But regardless, you need to know where every single particle is. And Heisenberg's uncertainty principle basically states that the more you start to know about the position of a particle, the less you know about its movement. And there's still a hard limit. So you just have that uncertainty that the more closer you get to know, it's like, when you're measuring something and you're like, oh, it's about a foot. And then you get out a ruler and you're like, okay, well, it's about this. And then you can get smaller and you can get smaller. But the smallest you can get is like a millimeter, on a ruler. It's like that, but really, really, really tiny. And but what I love about Star Trek is it's like, they acknowledge that they're breaking Heisenberg's uncertainty principle because the transporter has a Heisenberg compensator. How does it work? It works very well.
It works however you want it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I love when science fiction does that, where it's like, look, this is a technology that we have that we're going to use for story reasons. We know it's breaking science, and we're going to acknowledge that we're breaking science by naming it's compensating for it. It works.
I remembered like baryons when you were talking about that earlier, like the baryon sweep, I think, in Starship Mine and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
We've had a question come in from Raj about have you been on Star Trek Online recently?
Oh, called out. I have not. I actually was just saying I really, really missed being on Star Trek Online. What was the oh god, there was some joke people were saying when the Prodigy trailer, when they did like the pew 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 button, they were like, find the pew 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 button, and they were like, they just called out all Star Trek Online players for like tactical Operation Spacebar or whatever it was. But yeah, I actually pulled it up to play it, and then the day that I decided to play it was the day that they released their new story, and so the servers were host, so I ended up playing something else. But yes, you will probably see me hop on Star Trek Online sometime soon. It's been a long time though, so I'm not going to play with anyone until I remember all the controls.
So, like, I'm completely like new to Star Trek Online, conceptually and stuff like that. But so presumably, from what you're saying, you just like play it. You don't consult on it. Is that right?
No, I don't consult on Star Trek Online. I just play it. I used to have a Twitch channel. The Twitch channel is no longer active because I've got lots of other things I'm working on. But my viewers about a year ago, they all tried to get me to play Star Trek Online, and we had a bunch of developers in my chat as well, so they were able to help me. and it was fun for everyone because most of Star Trek Online streamers are people who've been playing it for years. It's been out for a long time. So they got to watch someone who's involved in Star Trek and obviously loves Star Trek play it and discover it for the first time. And I cried the first time I heard Leonard Nimoy's voice. Then I cried the first time I got to go hang out at Quark's. It's pretty sweet. It's very fun. Especially if people like picked it up when it first came out and haven't touched it since then, I would highly recommend people give it another try because I had a blast playing it.
Sounds a lot of fun.
It is, yeah.
So you wanted to talk about like how much overlap there is, I guess, between like computer graphics and like science.
Oh yeah, we were talking a little bit before we went live about the visuals in Star Trek, and it's interesting for me. So being a science consultant at all in entertainment requires a lot of trust, and it's hard to get those jobs because a lot of sci-fi writers will try reaching out to scientists to ask questions, and the scientists do have answers, but sometimes they're less than helpful, that they just say science doesn't work that way with no solution, no alternative. And so it takes a long time to build trust with writers to know, okay, this person not only knows what they're talking about, but they're able to support our creative vision. I'm going to yes and whatever you throw at me, we'll make it work however you need. I don't come up with the stories. I don't come up with the ideas. And I just kind of help massage the science to make it work, whatever they want to do. And one of the great things is that the more I work with the shows, the more they realize they could use me in other aspects. So like my role with Discovery has expanded. And then some of the other shows I help with across quite a few of them. I help with graphics now. And so just running like the conceptual stuff past me where they'll just send me mock-ups and just be like, as a scientist, does this make sense? And I say, no, but here's why. And let me see if we can alter it. But, you know, for the most part, though, they're really, really good. And they're a delight to work with. And I love working with the graphics department because they also love science. And they get to, you know, they look up cool kind of space stuff. And I get to help them figure out if it suits what they're looking for. So yeah, it's really fun. I like working across all of the production cycle.
Cool, brilliant. So we've had like quite a few comments coming in that are like enjoying the discussion and
thanks. Hi everyone.
Joining the chat. So thanks very much for coming into the chat. I noticed that in the chat we've got like Sean Case, who's involved in Enterprise in Space project. I think that's interesting. And certainly want to thank you very much for joining the discussion today, Erin. I wondered, like, what projects are you working on just now? Like, I wondered if you'd like to plug any, promote any, or where can fans find you on social media?
Yeah, thank you. I like I said, you can still check out my YouTube channel if you search for my name, Erin Macdonald. It's Dr. Erin Explains the Universe. I've got a few episodes of that as well. There's not new content coming, but there's a lot of old stuff on there that I think people would enjoy if they haven't seen it already. And you can find me on Twitter at Dr. Erin Mac, DrErinMac. That's where I just post a lot of science and Star Trek stuff. And then in terms of my own personal projects, you know, I'm mostly working on my own writing and everything, but I just hope people, you know, continue to watch these new seasons of Star Trek and with an open mind and an open heart. And I think they're all really good. And people who make these, you know, put their heart and soul into it and they want to make good shows. And so the great thing I think right now with having all this Star Trek content is that if one isn't for you, you might find one that is. So I would say give them all a try. Especially Star Trek Prodigy. I want everyone to watch that. Cool. But yeah, no, thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks very much, Erin. Thanks to your viewers as well. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be speaking with novelist John Jackson Miller about his latest Star Trek novel, Star Trek Picard novel, at the same time tomorrow. So thanks very much for watching, and track you later.